They never expected Earth to survive the culling. The Zarn Dominion, self-declared rulers of the galaxy, sent their fleet not to conquer Earth, but to erase it. The first attack hit without warning. No ultimatum. No declarations. Just fire from the sky and a wave of silence that followed. Cities turned to dust. Families vanished beneath ash and rubble. The oceans boiled in some places. In others, the air itself turned to poison. The message was clear. Earth was a threat, not because of its weapons or its technology, but because of its spirit. Colonel Jack Hadrian was in orbit when it began. His station, Prometheus, floated just outside lunar range, an obsolete relic of a Cold War that never reached the stars. He watched his home burn through cold, reinforced glass, powerless to do anything but scream until his throat bled. His wife and son were down there. So was his brother, his mother, his childhood memories. Everything. Gone. What remained of Earth was not civilization. It was vengeance clothed in skin and rage. The Zarn expected compliance after their show of power. Instead, they found resistance unlike anything they'd faced in 10,000 years of conquest. It started with scattered colonies. Mars, Europa, Titan, all human settlements. The survivors rallied under one banner. Not the UN, not EarthGov, something new, something feral. They called it Legion 1. And Jack Hadrian, reborn in fire and loss, became its voice. He stood before them all. Soldiers, engineers, farmers, orphans. They came to make an example of us, he said. We'll make an example of them. No applause, no chants, just silent nods and hardened eyes. Grief had carved humanity into weapons. Legion 1 didn't just fight back, they hunted. Every Zarn ship, every outpost, every trace of their presence near human territory was wiped clean, not with diplomacy, with precision. Humanity didn't want peace, it wanted justice, raw and loud and permanent. Jack's team, Unit 13, became legend in under 3 months, 12 men and women, all with personal scores to settle. No one questioned their methods, not even when the footage leaked of them spacing surrendered Zarn officers. Mercy is a luxury of the innocent, Jack said when questioned. He hadn't been innocent since the sky turned red over San Antonio. Now, 50 light-years from Earth, Legion 1 prepared for their greatest operation yet. The strike on Zarn's capital moon, Haleth Prime. It was a fortress, a shining jewel, the seat of an empire that had enslaved 100 worlds. It was also the place where the order to annihilate Earth had been signed. Jack walked the decks of the Black Hammer, his flagship. The crew saluted not because of protocol, but because they feared and respected the man who had nothing left to lose. In the war room, maps flickered across the screen. Points of entry, shield weaknesses, guard rotations. 2 days, his XO said. Then we drop. Jack said nothing. His eyes were locked on a small, blinking dot, Haleth Prime's civilian dome. Innocents, children, families, the same kind of people Earth once had. He clenched his jaw. The Zarn didn't hesitate. Why should he? Prep the warheads, he said. But sir, what about... They had a choice, just like we did. Now they'll know what we chose. The room went silent. The galaxy watched from the shadows. And for the first time in history, the rulers of the stars, beings who had never feared anything, felt it in their bones. Fear of humans. Because we didn't beg for peace. We chose vengeance. The hum of the Black Hammer's engines was steady. Too steady. Jack Hadrian paced the bridge with slow, measured steps, the kind that echoed longer than they should have. A captain's footsteps shouldn't sound like Judgment Day, but on this ship, under Jack's command, everything was heavy. Every movement carried the weight of revenge. Screens glowed in the dim light, tactical projections, enemy fleet positions, countdown timers. In 41 hours, Legion 1 would pierce Haleth Prime's defense grid and descend on the capital moon like a hurricane with a personal grudge. There was no room for error, no time for hesitation. Jack's thoughts drifted. Not to tactics, not to losses, but to his son, Leo. 7 years old when he died in the first wave. He used to draw starships on the walls with a marker, saying he'd grow up to be a space pilot like his dad. Jack never erased those drawings. When he found their apartment in ruins during a recon pass, he didn't cry. He just stared at the blackened wall and promised the ghosts that he'd make the galaxy choke on its arrogance. "Sir," came a voice behind him. Lieutenant Granger, nervous as usual. Young. Too young. He wasn't made for this kind of war, but no one left alive was. "What is it?" "We picked up an encrypted signal from Haleth Prime. Civilian broadcast. It's, a plea for negotiation." Jack turned his head, slowly. "What did they offer?" Granger swallowed. "They want a ceasefire, a delegation. They're claiming the Zarn High Council acted without full approval." Jack stepped forward and tapped the console. The message played, a soft, slithering voice in universal standard. "To the human warlord commanding the abomination known as Legion 1, we acknowledge your pain. Your retaliation has been noted. Let us now speak of peace. There has been enough suffering." Jack shut it off. "They're trying to stall," he muttered. "Buy time to evacuate their leaders. Cowards always want to talk when the knife's at their throat." "But, sir, they sounded desperate," Granger said carefully. "There might be children down there, families, maybe even some humans who were taken during the first sweeps." Jack's eyes locked onto Granger's. "My son was 7. They didn't hesitate to vaporize him. You want me to hesitate now?" Granger paled. "No, sir. I just—" "Get out." Granger left without another word. Jack turned toward the stars beyond the glass. In the distance, Haleth Prime hung like a jewel set in a noose. Cities glittered. Life pulsed beneath its atmospheric shield. It was beautiful. But so was Earth once. Before fire rained from above, his hand curled into a fist. On the moon's surface, the Zarn High Council convened in panic. 12 elders, each a living fossil of an empire that had never known fear, sat coiled in anxiety. Their chair claws clicked against obsidian stone as they debated in shrill, layered tongues. "He will not stop," hissed Siratol, the elder of interstellar control. "Every outpost we held has been erased. Every attempt at parley, rejected." "You said humans were weak," spat another. "You told us they'd beg, that their minds were too primitive for sustained war." Siratol's pupils shrank. "Their minds are not what we should have feared. It's their grief. It has no bottom. It just keeps digging." In the corner, a trembling aide brought data feeds, images of human warships decimating patrol fleets, footage of children crying over vaporized bodies, civilians torn apart in raids. Except they were Zarn children this time. "They've turned our methods against us," whispered one of the younger counselors. "No," Siratol corrected. "They've refined them, made them personal. They are not fighting for territory. They are fighting for pain." The chamber fell into a tense, unnatural silence. Back aboard the Black Hammer, Jack sat alone in his quarters, staring at a cracked, hollow frame. Leo smiled back at him from years ago, next to his wife, holding a paper star in one hand and a model ship in the other. The boy had bright eyes, too bright for this world. Jack remembered telling him once, "Sometimes we have to fight to protect the good things." He never imagined those words would become the foundation for annihilation. The door buzzed. "It's me," came a voice. Sergeant Bell. "Come in." Bell was the only one who could speak freely to Jack. They served together since the Titan uprising. He'd lost his sister during the first Zarn strike, and had been with Jack on every mission since. Command Deck says the Cividome has over 6,000 non-combatants, mostly Zarn, but a few species we've never even cataloged. We sure we want to drop warheads there? Jack didn't answer. Bell took a breath. Look, I'm not saying they deserve mercy, but some of these species, hell, they might have been slaves themselves, caught in the Zarn machine like everyone else. Collateral. Yeah, but are we any different from the bastards we're fighting if we start justifying this? Jack's face was stone. We're already different. We didn't start this. We're just finishing it. Bell stared at him. You think Leo would be proud of what we're about to do? That hurt? Jack stood slowly, walked past Bell and opened a drawer. Inside were dog tags, burned, broken, melted. Each one belonged to someone they'd lost. He dropped them onto the table like broken teeth. I'm not doing this for pride, Jack said quietly. I'm doing this because we lost everything, and the universe laughed. Bell looked away. I'll have the team ready, he muttered, and left. In the Zarn civilian dome, panic spread like fire through the markets. Aliens of every shape and size tried to flee. Ships clogged the hangars. Security forces, never trained for internal collapse, couldn't control the riots. Among the chaos was a human woman, not a soldier, not a spy, a mother, captured during the first attack on Earth. Her name was Nora. She hadn't seen the sky in 5 years. Her daughter had been taken from her, re-educated, raised to speak Zarn dialects. She barely remembered English now. And yet, when Nora heard the alarms, when she saw the panicked Zarn broadcasting messages to Jack Hadrian, she smiled. They're coming, she whispered to her daughter. Your people, they're finally coming. Her daughter looked up, confused. The soldiers who burned cities? No, Nora said. The ones who remember what we lost, and what we became because of it. Hours later, the strike teams assembled. The Black Hammer's launch bays thrummed with energy. Dropships prepped. Pilots checked weapons. Soldiers kissed dog tags and whispered names to ghosts. Jack stood at the front of it all, his armor black as the void, his eyes cold as Titan ice. Listen up, he said. This is it. No retreat, no surrender. We're not here to claim land. We're not here for diplomacy. We're here because they thought we were animals, because they thought fear would make us kneel. Well, now they get to kneel. The crew roared. He raised one arm. Operation Judgment begins now. And the dropships fell like thunder into the skies of Haleth Prime. The atmosphere around Haleth Prime didn't burn. It shattered. The Legion's dropships tore through it like serrated blades, leaving trails of fire and fury in their wake. Every vessel carried death forged in grief. Warriors who had nothing left to mourn, only names to avenge. Jack Hadrian stood in the lead ship, his face lit orange by the flames licking across the viewport. No helmet, no mask, just a man who wanted the enemy to see his eyes as they died. Behind him, Unit 13 geared up in silence. No one spoke. No one joked. This wasn't camaraderie. This was ritual. Revenge didn't need words. The ship shuddered violently as anti-air fire peppered the drop zone, but Jack didn't flinch. He'd died already, when Earth fell. This was just the long, drawn-out process of dragging his killers into hell with him. 5 minutes to breach, the pilot barked. Jack's voice was ice. Full deployment. Leave no structure intact, no power grid, no emergency channels. We're erasing them, completely. Yes, sir. Below them, Haleth Prime's surface burst into chaos. The Zarn military scrambled to respond, but their forces were scattered, confused. The dome city, a marvel of ancient alien engineering, lit up with defense grids too slow to track the incoming hailstorm of vengeance. Jack pulled his rifle from the rack and slung it over his back. "Let's finish what they started," he muttered, more to himself than anyone. The Blackhammer's command deck relayed real-time feeds. The operation unfolded with deadly precision. Drones dropped payloads on the communication towers. EMP bursts swept through their atmospheric controls. The entire moon began to flicker. One by one, lights died, and with them, hope. Civilians screamed through the broken streets. Shops collapsed. Fuel lines ignited. It wasn't just a military raid, it was planetary deconstruction. Jack's dropship tore through a shattered skyscraper and landed in the middle of the city's core district, cutting straight through a public plaza once reserved for festivals and celebrations. Statues of Zarn elders cracked and collapsed beneath the shockwave. The ramp opened. Unit 13 descended into the chaos, armored shadows with human faces twisted by loss. Jack fired first. An elite Zarn soldier crumpled before he even raised a weapon. The rest of the team followed suit. Precision wasn't necessary. Only eradication. One building after another was breached, cleared, and left burning. On a side street, Jack cornered a Zarn civilian family, 2 adults and a small child huddled beneath a collapsed walkway. They trembled at the sight of him. The father figure raised a shaking hand, pleading in broken standard. "Please, no fight, no weapon, family only, no war." Jack's finger twitched on the trigger. He remembered Leo, small, helpless, smiling with a paper star in his hand. He turned his rifle slightly, not away, just lowered. He stared at them, his eyes unmoving. "Run," he said flatly. The family didn't wait. They bolted, dragging the child. Jack didn't fire. He didn't feel merciful. He just didn't feel anything. Bell called in on comms. "Dome 6 cleared. Dozens dead. Found a human woman and her kid. Says she's been a prisoner since the first strike." Jack's brow tightened. "Where is she?" "Coming your way. She asked for you by name." Jack moved through the rubble until he saw her. Nora. Pale, thin, with dirt-streaked cheeks and haunted eyes. The little girl beside her clung to her leg, uncertain whether to smile or cry. "Colonel Hadrian," Nora said, voice cracking. "You really came." Jack stared at her. "I thought all the Earth prisoners were dead." "They told us we were," she said bitterly. "For 5 years they made us believe Earth didn't exist anymore, that the Zarn had saved us from our own destruction. And the kid. She's mine. They reprogrammed her, gave her a new name. I kept whispering her real one every night until she started remembering. She's human. She just forgot how to be." Jack knelt beside the girl. She looked up at him, confused but curious. "Do you know who you are?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "They said I was born on the moon." He touched her shoulder gently. "You were born on Earth. Your people didn't die. We just took our time deciding how hard we were going to hit back." Nora's eyes welled. "There are more. Thousands, scattered, angry, and we're not stopping." Bell stepped beside them. "What do we do with her?" Jack looked back toward the horizon. Explosions dotted the cityscape. Screams echoed in the wind. "Get her on a medevac! She's done her time in hell!" Hours passed. The dome continued to fall. Military targets were wiped clean, and infrastructure collapsed in a coordinated, brutal pattern. Jack and Unit 13 moved deeper into the city, now heading toward the command spire, home of the Zarn High Council. Intelligence had finally confirmed it. Most of the elders were still there, still hiding, still trying to call off a war they started too late. The path to the spire was lined with wreckage, streets broken in half. Corpses, alien and human, burned or buried under collapsed steel. This wasn't a battlefield. It was a graveyard. and Jack Hadrian walked it like a priest of ruin. A sniper took a shot from a shattered tower. Missed. Jack didn't. The Zarn fell from the rafters, half his head missing. Bell nudged Jack's shoulder. You see what I see? In the shadows of a crumbling bridge, children, Zarn, and other races huddled near a fire. Not soldiers, not fighters, just scared. Council's moving civvies into the outer sectors, Bell muttered. Human shields. Not unexpected, Jack growled. We keep going. You sure? Jack hesitated. His fingers flexed on the grip of his rifle. The firelight flickered on his face, revealing the cracks under the surface. War doesn't ask permission, he said. It just keeps going until someone's left to tell the story. At the command spire, the Zarn High Council waited like rats in a sinking ship. They'd never imagined a moment like this, cornered by a species they had once dismissed as feral. And now, the feral ones had learned strategy. Syra Toll's eyes twitched as she watched the human feed. She saw their dropships, their flamethrowers, their silence. They're not negotiating, she whispered. They don't want prisoners. They don't want reparations. They want extinction, another counselor whispered. Not of our race, Syra Toll corrected bitterly. Of our legacy, of our pride, of our immunity. They looked to the stars like children seeking gods, but the only god coming was human. Jack reached the spire by nightfall. The skies burned overhead, and Legion forces sealed off every exit. No one escaped, not this time. At the base of the tower, Jack stopped. Bell looked at him. We breaching? Jack stared up at the looming structure, glass and black stone, sharp like a dagger to the stars. He took a breath. Then he gave the order. Light it. Charges placed. Timers set. They didn't storm the tower. They erased it. The explosion shattered half the district. The High Council was atomized in seconds. No trial, no broadcast, no last words. Their final legacy was dust. As dawn approached, Haleth Prime was no longer a capital moon. It was a cratered ruin, a grave where arrogance once stood tall. Back aboard the Black Hammer, Jack stood on the observation deck. Bell joined him. We did it. They're gone. Jack didn't nod, didn't smile. War isn't about winning anymore, he said softly. It's about who gets to end it on their terms. And us? Jack closed his eyes. We ended it. Now the galaxy knows what happens when humans are pushed too far. Bell looked out at the remains of Haleth Prime. Think they'll come for revenge? They'll try, Jack said. But now, they'll do it while looking over their shoulder. The crater where Haleth Prime once stood still glowed in infrared. From orbit, it looked like a festering wound in the stars, a perfect circle of ruin, its once proud spires turned to molten shadows. There were no distress beacons, no emergency broadcasts. The Zarn Empire's heart was gone. But the galaxy wasn't silent. Across hundreds of star systems, the footage went viral. Not officially, not through the sanctioned relays, but through whispers, leaks, hackers, refugees. 1,000 alien species watched in horror as the videos played. Human dropships storming the skies. Civilian districts turned to rubble. The High Council's tower erupting into a sunburst of fire and debris. They watched Jack Hadrian stare into a camera, eyes void of apology, and say, "This is what happens when you burn our world." And they understood something ancient and primal. Humans weren't just fighting, they were hunting. On a mining colony called Kira Nul, far from the war's front lines, a Zarn administrator named Tesric moved through the industrial fields with shaking limbs. The facility had remained untouched, neutral, non-strategic. Yet every worker carried fear like a parasite on their back. Tesric stopped when he saw the mural. Someone had painted it overnight. A crude human skull with red streaks bursting from the eyes, and the words in broken standard beneath. Vengeance will find you. The other workers whispered about it, refused to work until it was scrubbed off. But no one touched it. Not even Tesric. He ordered extra guards posted, doubled the perimeter scans, and had a gun in his belt for the first time in 20 years. Because if Earth had taught the galaxy anything, it was this. You don't need numbers to start a war. You just need grief deep enough to turn into rage. On the Black Hammer, Jack Hadrian sat in silence. The war room was quiet now. No urgent missions, no enemy fleets. Just the slow, eerie crawl of space. Bell entered with a data pad. We're getting reports from 17 sectors. Zarn colonies are evacuating. Some systems are trying to break away entirely. The entire structure's collapsing. Jack didn't move. Good. Bell hesitated. There's more. We're getting requests. From who? Species that were under the Zarn's boot for generations. Slavers, corporate syndicates, puppet governments. Now they want to join us. Call it solidarity. Or maybe they just don't want to be next. Jack leaned forward. They think we're building something. Are we? Jack didn't answer. Because he didn't know. All he'd wanted was justice. Cold and permanent. Now they were calling him a liberator. A revolutionary. Some even said emissary of the earth flame, like he was a prophet bringing fire to the stars. He didn't feel like a prophet. He felt like a man who buried his son in ash and never stopped digging the grave wider. Nora stood in the ship's medical bay, watching her daughter, finally clean, finally safe, draw pictures on a tablet. Stars, spaceships, her mother, a man she'd only met once but now idolized. Is that Colonel Hadrian? Nora asked gently. The girl nodded. He's scary, but I think he's sad. Nora knelt beside her. He's both. Some men become dangerous when they're broken, but some become protectors. Her daughter looked confused. Did he protect Earth? Nora bit her lip. He came too late for that. But he protected what was left of it. She looked through the window, toward the command deck, toward Jack. Jack called a war council the next day. Not for strategy, but for future. Representatives from the surviving colonies, Mars, Titan, Ganymede, even a few ships from Alpha Centauri, beamed in via hologram. The bridge was full of hard faces, men and women who had led bloody revolts, sabotage missions, assassinations. None of them were diplomats. We've won the first war, Jack said, but now they'll come in a different way. General Strake, an old Mars separatist, snorted. Let them. We've got momentum. Jack's eyes narrowed. They won't use fleets this time. They'll use fear, isolation, politics. They'll turn other races against us, brand us as monsters. We are monsters, someone muttered. We burned a moon. Jack didn't deny it. I won't apologize for it, he said, but I also won't let this become a crusade. We didn't fight to rule. We fought to make sure no one ever does to us what they did again. Another voice piped up, one of the Titan commandants. And what about all these colonies asking to join us now? You want to build a federation? An empire of vengeance? Jack stood, looming tall. I want to build a wall, one that no alien, no invader, no empire ever crosses again. If they want to stand beside us, they'll bleed with us. If not, they stay out. Silence. Then slow nods. Agreement. Not out of unity, but exhaustion. No one had the stomach for another grand vision. They just wanted to survive and never bow again. Elsewhere in the galaxy, the old powers watched. The Zathari conglomerate closed its trade routes with Earth colonies. The Rin Dominion declared neutrality. The Korak Enclave began arming up, quietly forming fleets not aimed at the Zarn, but at Earth's satellites. In the shadows, fear twisted into planning, and in deep orbit around the ruins of Haleth Prime, something stirred. A ship. Small, stealth class. Not Zarn. Inside, a council of alien operatives studied footage of Jack Hadrian's face over and over again. "This is the human problem," one said. "They never learn balance. Either they kneel or they burn. And this one doesn't kneel. Number, which means if we want peace, we have to kill him." Back on the Black Hammer, Jack stood alone in the observation deck again. He no longer looked at stars with wonder. Only calculation. Bell joined him after a long silence. "We're getting word from the Andor Belt. Someone's been assassinating human envoys." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "Not Zarn. We think it's a splinter group, multi-species. Could be a coalition forming to neutralize us. You." Jack chuckled dryly. "Let them come." Bell's jaw tightened. "We've become a symbol, Jack. You especially. And symbols get targeted." Jack looked at him. "They burned our world. We made them watch theirs fall. Now they want to erase the memory of what we did. You see the irony?" "What?" "We gave them peace for centuries. They gave us silence and ash. Now we give them vengeance, and they beg for peace." Bell said nothing. Because what could he say? Humanity hadn't asked for this role. It had earned it the hard way. Deep in his quarters, Jack sat at a terminal. He opened a file, one he hadn't looked at in months. Leo's last recorded message. "Hi, Dad. Mom said you're saving the world. I made you something." A drawing, stars, a spaceship. The word home scribbled in a child's shaky handwriting. Jack stared at it. Because even now, after the war, after the blood, he didn't feel like he was home. He felt like he was still in orbit, still waiting to fall. The first assassination attempt came 6 days after the Haleth Prime strike. It happened on Cora Station, neutral territory orbiting a dead star, where Earth's new alliance was holding fragile talks with former Zarn-subjugated races. The air was stale, the corridors gray and rusted, and the delegates wore fake smiles stretched thin by fear. Everyone was watching the humans now, not to see if they would attack again, but to see if they could be reasoned with. Jack Hadrian didn't care for any of it. He sat in the chamber's high seat, armor unpolished, jaw locked, eyes dead. He didn't speak much, just stared. And people listened. The delegate from Drevna 3, a reptilian creature named Koshmar, had just finished thanking him, nervously, for liberating the galaxy from tyranny, when the lights cut out. 3 seconds of black. Then a scream. Then the flash of a plasma round, followed by another. Bell tackled Jack to the ground as 2 guards lit up in a cloud of energy and flesh. Chaos erupted. Delegates ducked. Soldiers fired blind. The scent of scorched ozone filled the air. By the time the emergency lights kicked in, 5 were dead. Jack wasn't one of them. He stood up calmly, dusted his armor, and walked toward the body of the assassin. A slim humanoid wrapped in reflective mesh, face burned off by counterfire. Bell approached with his rifle drawn. "You all right?" Jack didn't answer. He looked at the charred face, trying to find something. A hint, a clue. But there was nothing left but teeth and melted skin. "Not Zarn," Bell muttered. "Too small. No implants. Not military either." Jack knelt and picked something from the floor. A pendant. It bore no insignia, just a crude carving of 3 rings overlapping. Jack held it up. "Who the hell are these people?" The intel came slowly. Too slowly. The symbol was traced to a secretive movement spreading across several outer systems, a rogue coalition called the Concord of Balance. It wasn't a government. It wasn't even military. It was an ideology, one born from fear, from the ashes of Haleth Prime, from the images of humans burning cities, killing civilians, refusing to negotiate. The Concord's message was simple. If humans won't stop themselves, we must. They called Jack Hadrian the Dark Star, the beginning of humanity's descent into galactic dominance. They weren't wrong. In the command deck of the Black Hammer, the atmosphere shifted, not from grief, from doubt. Reports trickled in every hour. Raids on human outposts, sabotage on trade ships, diplomats murdered en route to peace summits. One group even hijacked a relief vessel and spaced the entire crew, leaving the hull marked with the 3 rings. Jack paced in front of the holo map. His officers watched him with a kind of reverence that bordered on fear. "We created a vacuum," Bell said. "The Zarn are gone, and now every broken little power wants to fill the gap." Jack looked up. "Then we start crushing them one by one." Someone, Lieutenant Morin, shifted uncomfortably. "That's escalation, sir." Jack's eyes snapped to him. "We already escalated when Earth fell. Everything after that is just cleanup." Morin looked like he wanted to protest, but stayed quiet. Bell spoke carefully. "The Concord's not just enemies. Some of them were allies once. Scientists, colonists, even a few Earthborn. They think you're too dangerous to let live." "Good," Jack said, voice cold. "Let them keep thinking. While they run, we'll be arming." He stared at the map. Flashpoints everywhere, red dots spreading like a virus. "This is the war after the war," he muttered, "and we're still not done bleeding." A week later, the second attempt came. This time it was personal. Jack was alone in his quarters, standing in front of Leo's drawing again. The soft scribbles, the misspelled word HOM, the stars. He heard the door slide open and didn't even turn. "Security's tighter than ever. You'd need clearance just to breathe near my door." The voice behind him wasn't Bell's. It was soft, female, cold. "That's why I came alone." Jack turned slowly. The woman standing there was Zarn hybrid, rare. Her skin bore faint ridges, her eyes luminous, but her form was lean, familiar, human in posture, weapon drawn. "You're conquered," he said. She nodded. "You ended Haleth Prime. We intend to end you." Jack stared at her hand. It trembled. "You lost someone," he said. "Didn't you?" "My brother, civilian engineer. He died trying to help evacuate children when your firebombs dropped." Jack nodded slowly. "So kill me." She hesitated. He stepped forward. "Do it." She raised the pistol, hand shaking harder, and couldn't. "You're not the only one with ghosts," he said. Then Bell stormed in, too late, and tackled her. She dropped the pistol, didn't resist, just cried. "I was supposed to hate you," she whispered, "but all I see is someone who's already dead." Jack stood over her, silent. Then he walked out. In the medbay, Jack watched her through the glass. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. She didn't even look up. "She's not a soldier," Bell said. "She's just a message." Jack nodded. "The Conquered wants me scared. Or dead. Preferably both." Bell stepped closer. "Jack, you need to listen. There's talk on the colonies. Even among our own people. They think you're bringing this heat down on us. That maybe it's time to step back." Jack turned, sharply. "Step back from what?" "From being you." Jack's eyes narrowed. "You mean the man who stopped the extermination of our species? That's the one you want to silence?" "I mean the man who's becoming a target bigger than any fleet." Jack stared at him, long and hard, then turned away. "Tell the men to arm the strike cruisers. Conquered or not, we don't run from threats." Bell didn't move. "Understood, sir." That night, Jack didn't sleep. He sat alone in the gravity chamber, lights low, artificial stars spinning around him. He replayed the attack on Haleth Prime again. And again. He watched the flames, the collapsing spire, the bodies, then Leo's message. And for the first time since Earth's fall, Jack cried. Not because of guilt. Because he didn't feel anything anymore. And he knew, somewhere deep inside, the man who loved that little boy had burned up with him. The Black Hammer drifted in high orbit above Eros 9, a former Zarn-controlled refinery world now under Legion control. Below, human banners waved over burning slag towers and retooled factories. The air was heavy with smoke and victory, but above, in the cold dark of command, something deeper than fire brewed. Doubt. Jack Hadrian stood in front of the war table again, eyes locked on a string of red indicators that crept across the galactic border like poison vines. The Concord has established 3 staging systems, Bell reported, his voice flat. We intercepted communications. They're coordinating with rogue human fleets, former EarthGov remnants, probably mercenaries now. Jack didn't flinch. And the colonies? Some are turning away from us, quietly. No declarations, but they're blocking transmissions. They're scared of retaliation, or scared of you. Jack didn't respond. Commander Strake, patched in from the Mars Forward Command, appeared on the main holo feed. His voice was steel. This is a cancer. The Conquered spreads lies, stirs fear, then uses it to justify attacks. We need to wipe out their central cells before more colonies defect. I agree, Jack said, but Bell stepped forward. Number, we don't know where their true command is, and some of their members, they're civilians, exiles, people who fought beside us when the Zarn fell. Traitors now, Jack replied coldly. Bell pushed harder. You can't erase every threat with missiles, Jack, not when half of it looks like us. Jack's jaw tensed. There's no us anymore, Bell. Just those who remember Earth burning, and those who think we overreacted. The room chilled. Even through comms, Strake's face tensed at Jack's words. Something dangerous passed between them. An understanding. Bell saw it too. Something was cracking inside Legion 1. 3 days later, Jack's suspicions came true. The Concord attacked Colony Verta 9, but not with ships. With ideas. Their agents slipped into the colony's communication network, broadcasting videos of Jack Hadrian's raids, his speeches, even manipulated footage of civilian casualties from Haleth Prime. They painted him not as a liberator, but a genocidal warlord. A tyrant in black armor, incapable of peace, addicted to war. It worked. The local governor shut down the Legion garrison's feed, refused to send reinforcements, declared Verta 9 a neutral humanitarian system. Jack read the statement with a clenched fist. We honor what Colonel Hadrian did to stop the Zarn, but his current actions no longer reflect the values of survival or peace. We seek a different future. He crushed the datapad in his hand. Back on the Black Hammer, the command deck buzzed with whispers. Jack walked through it like a ghost in armor. Silent. Heavy. Officers straightened at his presence, but their eyes betrayed something worse than fear. Wavering loyalty. He stepped into the strategy chamber where Bell stood waiting. Alone. You leaked the casualty footage, didn't you? Jack asked, without flinching. Bell didn't deny it. I thought if the colonies saw everything, the whole truth, they'd back off. Maybe force a sit-down, a peace. Jack took a step forward. We don't negotiate with those who kill our children, Bell. They didn't kill Leo, Bell said quietly. The Zarn did. And they're gone. So why are we still killing? Silence cracked like thunder between them. Jack's voice dropped. Because we don't get to live in the world Leo died in. We get to survive in the world that made it happen. Bell looked away. I didn't want to betray you, he said. But you've become something I don't understand anymore. Jack turned his back. You're relieved of duty. Bell blinked. What? Effective immediately. You're confined to quarters until further notice. Jack. If you speak again, I'll have you spaced. Go bell left, slowly. No fight, no words, just pain. And that was when Jack knew. The war outside wasn't half as dangerous as the war inside. Hours later, the first strike hit. Not a missile, a virus. The Black Hammer's navigation went dark, mid-orbit. Engines stalled, gravity flickered. Half the lights died as internal systems scrambled under a foreign protocol. The security feed showed infiltrators on Deck 4. 3 masked figures in Concord armor, armed with plasma disruptors. They weren't here to take the ship. They were here to kill him. Jack didn't wait for the alert. He was already moving, rifle in hand, flanked by 2 guards. They passed body after body, officers cut down with precision, systems fried from inside. He reached the blast doors and stopped. On the wall, drawn in blood, were 3 circles. The Concord's mark. He ordered the doors open. The first agent barely had time to turn before Jack shot him point blank in the face. The second fired and grazed Jack's shoulder. He barely flinched. Shot her through the ribs. She fell, choking. The third was different. A human. Fully. And Jack recognized him. Lieutenant Morin. The one who had questioned him back in the strategy room. "You were Legion," Jack growled. "I am Legion," Morin spat, bleeding from the mouth. "The version that remembers why we fought. To stop monsters, not become them." Jack stepped closer. Did Leo deserve to burn? Morin flinched. "No." "Then don't ever tell me who the monster is." He fired. Point blank. The ship recovered after 10 hours of repair. The virus was contained. The infiltrators were purged. But something irreversible had happened. Jack Hadrian had killed one of his own. Some of the crew nodded in approval. Quietly. They feared the Concord's reach, but others stared at Jack like they didn't know him anymore. And maybe he didn't either. 2 days passed. Bell remained in confinement. No trial. Jack visited him once. No words. Just looked through the glass. Bell didn't stand. Didn't speak. He just stared at Jack's reflection and shook his head. The outer systems continued to fracture. Concord cells gained sympathy. They released manifestos, claiming they didn't want war, only balance. That humanity had gone too far, that Jack Hadrian was now a symbol of unchecked violence. He wasn't the sword, he was the sickness. And across the stars, even some humans started to believe them. Jack sat alone in the command chamber late one night. A bottle of Titan whiskey sat unopened on the table beside him. The stars outside flickered. Silent, endless, watching. He whispered to no one, "They want me dead because I made them afraid." He tapped the glass. Good. But his hands trembled, not from fear, from the weight, because being feared is power, but it's also a prison, and Jack Hadrian had built his out of bones. The coordinates came in quietly. A hacked data stream intercepted on the fringes of the Orion expanse, slipped into Black Hammer's mainframe through a dead relay satellite. No encryption. Just one cold line of text and a set of numbers. Concord Prime, Last Refuge System, Cygnus Delta 6. Jack Hadrian stood over the terminal in his private quarters, alone, his face dim in the flicker of the code. He read it twice, then again, not because he didn't believe it, but because he knew what it meant. This wasn't a trap. It was an invitation. By dawn cycle, the Black Hammer was in full prep mode. Strike fleet mobilized, troop carriers fueled, stealth ships were dispatched ahead for deep scan verification, and the War Council, what remained of it, was summoned. The room felt smaller now. Strake, patched in from Mars again, Commander Thorne from Ganymede. A dozen others blinked in via holofeed, each one with the same wary expression. Jack stood at the head of the table, arms behind his back, the stubble on his face rougher, darker. "We found them," he said without preamble. "The Concord's main node, their fleet, their operatives, their propaganda farms, all of it. We strike now, fast, loud, and final." Thorne raised a brow. "You're proposing we commit half of our remaining forces to a system we haven't verified?" "It's verified," Jack snapped. "We lost too many to get these coordinates. This is the only window we'll get before they scatter again." Strake cleared his throat. "Even if it's real, and I'm not saying it's not, this isn't like Haleth Prime. Concord Prime isn't a military complex. It's a city, civilian-heavy. Scientists, defectors, political exiles. They declared war the moment they put a rifle in a civilian's hands." Jack cut in. "They've killed my officers, sabotaged our ships, assassinated envoys. If they wanted peace, they would have spoken before they started spacing our people." Another voice buzzed in. "Some of those people are human." Jack met the speaker's eyes through the feed. So were the people buried in Earth's ash. That ended the debate. The vote passed 9-3. Operation Ashwind was approved. Bell sat behind reinforced glass, wrists chained, silent as the guards relayed the council's decision. He didn't react, didn't blink, just whispered to himself, "It never ends." In the prep bay, Legion troops readied their gear. Some moved with purpose, others hesitated between steps. Rumors spread fast. Civilian targets, mass eradication, another Haleth Prime. Jack walked among them. He didn't give speeches anymore. He gave orders. "Section 7 will drop on the orbital communications towers. No mercy, no messages out. They die in silence. Section 9, power grids. Target infrastructure before you touch a single living thing. And the primary team hits the central Concord Tower, alive or dead. I want their council off the map." A young soldier, private, barely older than Leo had been, raised his hand. "Sir, what if there are kids down there?" Jack looked at him, unreadable. There were kids on Earth. He didn't wait for more questions. 3 days later, the fleet entered the Cygnus Delta system. And there it was. Concord Prime. A lush, blue-gray moon orbiting a gas giant. Rings glittering around it like halos made of ice and sorrow. From space, it looked peaceful, untouched. A paradise. Below the clouds, hundreds of small cities dotted the valleys, forests, and oceans. Most had no weapons, no defense shields, no warships in orbit. The Concord didn't expect a full assault. They thought Jack Hadrian was bluffing. They were wrong. "Launch all units," Jack ordered. The dropships peeled off the black hammer like hornets, descending in formation. Rail cannons rotated into place. Plasma batteries charged. Bombers began atmospheric breach maneuvers. Then came the warning. From inside. The bridge alarms screamed red as internal security locked down Deck 4. Explosions ripped through the fuel bay. Automated doors sealed. Lives screamed out over broken comms. A mutiny. Jack spun toward the security feed. Loyalists of Bell, dozens, maybe more. Mostly junior officers, some engineers. None armored, but all determined. He slammed his fist on the command panel. "Who let them organize?" "Sir, internal chatter's been locked down since Verta 9. They must have coordinated through encrypted line-of-sight signals. We thought they were clean." Jack's eyes blazed. "Seal Deck 4, suck the oxygen out." "Sir?" They made their choice. The airlocks opened. Screams turned to silence. The lights dimmed, and the last spark of rebellion was gone before it could become fire. When the command crew looked back at Jack, no one questioned him. No one spoke, because the silence was louder than anything else. On the surface of Concord Prime, fire bloomed like flowers. Jack touched down in the city's central plaza with Unit 13, what was left of it. His boots hit the marble of a peaceful society that had once held rallies for unity. A fountain nearby spilled over with blood. The conquered tower loomed above him. White, arched, pure. He aimed his cannon at its base and fired. Inside, the Conquered's true leaders huddled around a data table, their robes tattered, their voices frantic. "He came," one whispered. "He actually came. We tried to warn them." Another stood. "He is what we made him. Don't you see? We called him the Dark Star so often we birthed it into reality." Their final message, broadcast seconds before the tower fell, was a flickering hollow of a woman's face. "If you see this, know that vengeance eats itself. It burns even the ones who carry the torch." Jack walked through the rubble of the tower as it smoldered. His team cleared the bodies, checked for survivors. None. He stepped over cracked stone, past shattered data cores, until he reached the command dais. And there it was. The Conquered symbol. 3 interlocking rings, cracked down the middle. He stared at it. For a long time, and for once, his voice trembled. "Why did you make me this?" Back on the black hammer, Bell was pulled from his cell. He stood in front of the view screen as Conquered Prime burned in the distance. Jack stood beside him. Bell looked, just once, then back at Jack. "You were never afraid of becoming the monster." Jack didn't blink. "I was afraid I wouldn't go far enough." The war was over, not because the galaxy declared it finished, but because no one dared fight anymore. Conquered Prime had fallen, its towers, its people, its ideals reduced to rubble and whispers. The 3-ring symbol that once stood for peace and balance now lay broken in ash beneath human boots. Every planet, every moon, every listening outpost watched the feeds, saw Jack Hadrian walk through the flames without flinching, saw the last Conquered broadcast silenced mid-sentence. He didn't gloat. He didn't justify. He just erased. And in that silence, the galaxy decided. No more war. Not because of peace, because of fear. Inside the command chamber of the Black Hammer, Jack sat alone. No council, no orders, just him, and a single datapad flashing red with the header, High Command, Post-War Transition Proposal. He read it once, then again. The colonies were calling for a restructure, a demilitarization, the dismantling of Legion 1. His face didn't change. He already knew it was coming. You don't win a war like this and walk away a hero. You walk away like something radioactive, untouchable, feared, and best buried far from civilization. Bell stood in the observation chamber, unchained for the first time in weeks. He watched the stars, arms folded, the view of Conquered Prime's shattered orbit in the distance. Jack entered behind him. They didn't speak for a while. Finally, Bell said, "So? That's it. We won." Jack didn't answer. Bell turned. "You don't feel it, do you?" "What?" "The weight. The cost." Jack walked past him, stopping at the glass. "Every night I feel it," he said. "In the silence, in the dreams, in the still moments when I almost forget what Leo's voice sounded like." Bell's voice softened. "Then why keep going?" Jack's jaw tightened. "Because the only thing worse than becoming the monster was letting them think we wouldn't. Earth's colonies called for an emergency tribunal within a standard week. Every major faction sent envoys, not because they had authority, Jack had made sure of that, but because they wanted closure. The hearings were held aboard a neutral station above Ganymede. Sterile, diplomatic, clean. Too clean. Jack arrived without ceremony, flanked by 2 guards he didn't need. The room was full of eyes. Alien, human, synthetic. They didn't look at him like a criminal. They looked at him like a ghost. The lead adjudicator, a woman from Europa with an artificial voice, stood. "Colonel Jack Hadrian, you stand before this assembly not for punishment, but for clarity. The galaxy wants to understand. Why did you destroy Conquered Prime?" Jack said nothing. Then finally he stepped forward. No one wanted to understand Earth when it burned. No one asked us how we felt when our children died. But now that we've won, now that we've made you afraid, suddenly you want clarity? Murmurs, shifts in chairs. Jack continued. They say I led a war of vengeance. They're right. They say I became what I hated. They're half right. He stepped closer to the center podium. What I hated wasn't the Zarn. It wasn't even the galaxy. It was how easily you forgot us. You watched us burn. You said nothing. Then we reminded you we were still here. Loudly, permanently. The room went still. I won't apologize for that. The adjudicator said nothing for a long time, then simply nodded. This tribunal rules the following. The Legion is to be disbanded. All remaining war assets decommissioned. Jack Hadrian is to step down from command, effective immediately. She paused, but no charges will be filed. The galaxy will remember this not as justice, but as consequence. Jack gave a single nod. He didn't thank her. He turned and walked out. 2 weeks later, the Black Hammer was grounded on Titan's far dock, stripped of weapons, crew dismissed, hangars emptied. Jack stood on the loading ramp one last time. Bell approached, a bag slung over his shoulder. They're offering relocation, new identity. You could start over. Jack didn't answer. Bell stepped closer. You don't have to disappear, you know. You could help rebuild. Teach, advise, be part of something human again. Jack looked up at the sky, Titan's hazy clouds swirling above orange plains. I don't know if I'm human anymore, he said. Not after all this. Bell placed a hand on his shoulder. I think that's why you still are. They didn't say goodbye. They just nodded. Then Bell walked away, and Jack walked the other direction. Months passed. The galaxy moved on. The Zarn remnants vanished into the rim. The conquered scattered into myth. Peace came, not through treaties, but through fear of what happens without it. Jack Hadrian's name was erased from official records. No statues, no medals, no parades, just stories of a man who answered silence with fire. On a backwater moon in the outer belt, in a quiet mining village, a little boy sat drawing stars on a wall with a piece of coal. His mother smiled at him. Who's that? She asked, pointing to the figure beside the stars. The boy shrugged. Dunno, just someone watching. She looked at it. A man in armor, tall and alone, and the stars around him burned. Far from any system that mattered, an old ship floated in the dark, not registered, not armed, just drifting. Inside, a man sat with a cracked holoframe in his hand, a child's drawing inside, a ship, a family, the word home scrawled across the top in a shaky hand. Jack Hadrian closed his eyes, and for the first time since Earth fell, he rested. The transmission came through every satellite network, hijacking feeds from Buenos Aires to Tokyo, from the salt flats of Utah to the neon towers of New Seoul. It was sudden, uninvited, and impossible to ignore. A figure, tall and bathed in dark violet light, stood encased in gold-trimmed armor, eyes glowing like twin suns. His voice echoed across languages, translated instantly by the tech no one on Earth recognized. People of Earth, the figure began, you now kneel before the Zorthian Empire. Resistance is death. Compliance earns you survival. You have one planetary cycle to submit or face extinction. The silence afterward was suffocating. Newscasters didn't blink. Social media went dark for 0.8 seconds. A record. Then, almost as if choreographed by the entire species' collective insanity, humanity responded in the only way it could. It laughed. Loud, mocking, uncontrolled, from living rooms to classrooms, military bunkers to late-night talk shows, the world exploded in laughter. Memes flooded the net, TikToks popped up with skits reenacting the speech, complete with tinfoil helmets and over-the-top monologues. Someone even uploaded a remix of the aliens' message set to dubstep, titled Bow to Who? It hit 100 million views in 3 hours. At first, most assumed it was a prank, some viral marketing campaign. But when Earth's governments scrambled jets in response to real, tangible, and hostile crafts breaching orbit, and when 3 satellites vanished without explanation, the laughter only grew louder, because fear had long since been replaced by something else in the 21st century Earthling: sarcasm, weaponized by trauma. In Washington, a joint military council convened. General Trask, a thick-jawed, steel-eyed veteran of the Eurasian conflicts, lit a cigar in the no-smoking zone and barked to no one in particular. They threatened us mid-inflation, post-pandemic, and while the planet's on fire, hell, they're late to the party. In Moscow, Defense Commander Artonov muttered dryly, "They want submission? They'll get Slavic hospitality." The Zorthians had conquered 817 planetary systems without a single significant loss. Their empire spanned centuries and star clusters. They expected Earth to fall like all the others, trembling, compliant, begging for mercy. Instead, they intercepted a broadcast from Earth. Live. Global viewership, 4.6 billion. It featured a man in a bathrobe, holding a cup of coffee, speaking from what looked like a rundown kitchen. He stared dead into the camera and said, "So, thanks for the intergalactic death threat. Super terrifying. But I haven't even paid off my student loans yet, so come back when I'm more emotionally available." The broadcast cut to canned laughter and a jingle. The Empire's command vessel, Vorkal, hovered in low orbit, watching. The High Inquisitor Zvailon, a being who'd once vaporized an entire moon for disobedience, turned to his second-in-command and whispered, "What is wrong with this species?" That night, the Empire issued a second message, furious, promising planetary annihilation at dawn. Earth responded with a live comedy roast titled Alien Karen Wants Our Planet, hosted by 4 stand-up comedians who pulled 0 punches and went viral instantly. And still, the Zorthians didn't understand. Their scans confirmed the presence of nuclear arsenals, kinetic satellites, AI warfare protocols. Yes, but psychologically? Behaviorally? They had expected submission. Instead, they had triggered Earth's most dangerous evolutionary trait: humor under pressure. The Zorthians prepared their assault with the precision of a millennia-old military machine. A fleet of 33 assault carriers, each the size of Manhattan, aligned into formation above Earth's equator. Orbital cannons calibrated, nanite swarms were primed, and disintegration beams were warmed to full charge. In any other system, this display would have triggered immediate capitulation. But Earth didn't blink. If anything, it got worse. From Johannesburg to Jacksonville, the people of Earth organized impromptu alien invasion viewing parties. Giant screens went up in the streets, complete with popcorn stands and taco trucks. Some called it the end of the world. Most called it Friday Night. A live stream titled Zorthians Be Trippin' became the #1 trending stream in less than an hour. A Texas-based rancher named Buck, shirtless, chewing tobacco, stood in front of a corroded pickup with a shotgun across his shoulder and declared, "Let me see one of them alien bastards land here. I got a welcome party they ain't ready for." The clip was looped over 10 million times. Even China's Ministry of Defense quietly retweeted it, with a laughing emoji. What the Zorthians had failed to calculate, what their AI simulations never accounted for, was Earth's abnormal social coping mechanism: humor as psychological armor. Most species in the galaxy operated on strict emotional pathways. Fear suppressed logic. Panic increased compliance. But humans? They cracked jokes as cities burned. They roasted death itself. In the orbital war room of the Vorkal, High Inquisitor Zavalun stared at the latest intercepted Earth broadcast. It featured a bearded man in his 30s, broadcasting from what appeared to be his basement bunker. He looked straight into the camera and spoke in perfect Galactic standard. Thanks to a translator app coded by some kid from Mumbai who thought it'd be funny. Zorthians, my dudes, listen up. This is Earth. We've survived world wars, plagues, inflation, TikTok drama, and Nickelback. You think you scare us? Bruh, we had clowns eating children in sewers for fun. The Zorthian advisors began recalculating. Are they mentally stable? Asked Commander Rilak, a 12-foot war beast wrapped in armor thick enough to stop solar flares. No, Zavalun muttered. Worse, they're emotionally detached and violently whimsical. Meanwhile, Earth's leadership held a meeting, but not in secret bunkers or shadowy boardrooms. No, they live-streamed it. The UN headquarters was turned into a circus of sarcasm and military logistics. Generals wore sunglasses indoors. Presidents wore hoodies. The entire room reeked of caffeine and dry humor. General Trask stood up during the live session. We got threats, we got space laser eyes, and we got jokes. But here's the thing. The more they talk, the funnier this becomes. They don't understand us because they think fear equals surrender. They don't get that we've been born into chaos. We made memes out of global tragedies before breakfast. He pointed to a screen where some YouTuber was animating the Zorthian Emperor with googly eyes and fart noises. The room roared. And yet, beneath the sarcasm, the Earth militaries were working hard. Hidden under the veil of mockery, underground bunkers buzzed with AI-powered simulations. Quantum encryption locked in nuclear command codes. SpaceX, ESA, and several rogue launch networks aligned their satellite lasers under one backdoor protocol. Project Scorched Comedian. By the time the Zorthian fleet initiated their first strike, a strange silence fell across their command deck. Their solar cannon, a weapon capable of glassing entire continents, refused to lock on. Their radar screens flickered. Orbital telemetry jammed. Earth had hit back, without launching a single missile. They had hacked them, not through traditional means. Number Earth didn't send code. It sent content. Billions of Earth-based signals, memes, videos, JPEGs of cats with sunglasses bombarded the Zorthian data cores. Their ships ran on hyper-intelligent AI neural webs, and those webs were now flooded with TikTok. The Vorkal's lights dimmed as AI systems slowed. "We are under informational overload," shrieked the data technician. Zavalun clenched his fists. What have they done? On the ship's main monitor, a new Earth transmission began to play. It was a parody music video titled Zorthians Ain't Got No Drip, featuring auto-tuned voices mocking their armor design and claiming the Empire used Wi-Fi slower than McDonald's. Some ships stalled in orbit. Back on Earth, deep beneath Colorado in NORAD, a grim-faced young lieutenant reported, "Sir, 19 of their 33 ships just dropped out of orbital sync. Systems are overwhelmed with Earth media garbage." "Define garbage," Trask barked. The lieutenant didn't even smirk. "Furries, ASMR mukbangs, a 5-hour loop of a cat slapping a baby." Trask lit another cigar. "Beautiful. Keep sending." The Zorthians finally retaliated. In frustration, they unleashed kinetic rods. Massive tungsten cylinders dropped from orbit with the destructive force of mini-nukes. 5 were launched. Earth countered with a unified missile defense net. US THAAD, Russian S-500, Israeli Arrow, and even Iran's rogue laser grid, all coordinated under an AI umbrella called Project Parity. Only one rod hit, a patch of forest in Canada. The only casualty was a squirrel, and it went viral. Within hours, the squirrel had a name, Commander Nutmeg, and a backstory. People edited his face onto war posters. Plush toys sold out by the millions. The Empire's attempted show of force became Earth's newest marketing opportunity. Zavalen paced in circles. They think war is a performance. No, replied his second-in-command grimly. They've made it one. Desperate, the Empire sent ground forces. 3 transports landed in rural zones, 1 in Kansas, 1 in Australia's outback, and 1 in a Ukrainian village. All 3 were destroyed before footage could even be analyzed. In Kansas, a farmer used a tractor rigged with old fireworks and diesel fuel to set off an explosion that melted the dropship's hull. He was later recorded saying, "I thought it was a drone competition. Didn't know it was an alien." In Ukraine, the locals set up a table with vodka, Salo, and beat the Zorthian patrol into retreat after mistaking them for unusually aggressive tourists. In Australia, a man named Darren punched a Zorthian in the throat and yelled, "Get off my damn lawn, you tin-faced kangaroo!" Every incident became a meme. Every loss was celebrated with beer and laughter. The final straw came when the Empire intercepted a global ad campaign by Nike. Just invade it, with a Zorthian soldier sprinting, terrified, from a mob of Earthlings carrying selfie sticks and Molotovs. Zavalen collapsed into his command throne. "They're not even fighting us seriously." "No, my lord," said the aide. "They're playing." That was when the Emperor himself contacted the Vorkal. His image appeared, holographic, towering, his voice like crushing stone. "Zavalen, report." The High Inquisitor kneeled. "My Emperor, Earth is broken. They laugh in war. They drown our AI with memes. They are unpredictable, unrelenting, and what? They are entertaining." The Emperor leaned forward. "Interesting. Perhaps they are not to be conquered." Zavalen dared to raise his head. "What shall we do, my lord?" There was a pause. Then came the command that would change galactic history forever. "Send an emissary." "Not a threat. A job offer. We need writers for our propaganda department." The emissary landed in Nevada. Not because Earth had designated a meeting zone there, but because the Zorthians' AI, now partly corrupted by Earth media, believed Area 51 to be a galactic embassy. No one corrected it. They were too busy watching a live stream of the descent, complete with dramatic music, commentary from retired sportscasters, and a holographic ticker at the bottom that read, "Breaking. Aliens come to Earth to hire comedians. Stand-up war now official." The ship that touched down was not one of war. It was a sleek diplomatic vessel, trimmed in gold with a hull that shimmered with celestial tech. But it carried a crew of only 3. Zorthian Ambassador Volkra, his translator drone, and a humanoid communications interface, now running Earth-based humor plugins downloaded from Reddit threads and late-night show archives. They stepped out into a crowd of 400 humans wearing shirts that read, "I'd invade that," and "ET, go home, unless you have a job offer." The crowd parted for a man in flip-flops and a Department of Defense badge, chewing gum and holding a slushie. He introduced himself without ceremony. "Mark, Earth's unofficial spokesperson. Also, I run a meme page. You here to surrender, hire someone, or file a complaint?" Volkra blinked. "We come in pursuit of cultural engagement." "Speak clearer, buddy. We're Earth. We do sarcasm, not subtlety." Volkra's translator buzzed. "Your world possesses a weapon more dangerous than lasers. Your culture, your irreverence, your narrative inversion, your refusal to obey emotional protocol. Our empire has realized you are uncolonizable. So now we seek an alliance." Of entertainment, Mark took a long slurp from his drink. "Let me get this straight. You came here to murder us, and now you want us to write your jokes? Yes, Volcra replied. Why? Because we cannot stop watching your content. It has compromised the High Emperor's attention span. His Imperial fleet no longer trains. They binge Earth flicks and argue over sitcom endings. Mark blinked slowly. So, let me summarize. You had a 1,000-year empire, undefeated in war, and Earth took you down with memes, trash reality TV, and rogue podcast bros? Volcra didn't speak. He just nodded, defeated, and thus began what historians would later call the Age of Reverse Colonization. While governments debated what to do next, private companies pounced. Netflix offered the Zorthians a licensing deal. Elon Musk posted a meme of himself shaking hands with an alien and wrote, "I told y'all." Amazon began shipping Galactic influencer starter kits. Within days, every Earth-based content farm had Zorthian outreach divisions. Even Taco Bell released a commercial welcoming their new space taco enthusiasts and offered the Zorthians a nacho truce. On Earth's side, no one believed peace had come. Not really. There was still a tension in the air, an unspoken understanding that all this absurdity balanced on a razor-thin edge. That if either side took things too seriously, the entire thing could collapse into bloodshed. But for now, humanity did what it did best. They monetized it. Volcra stayed in Los Angeles. Within a week, he had a verified Instagram account, was spotted at Coachella wearing sunglasses, even though his species saw via echolocation, and signed a 3-season deal for a sitcom titled Close Encounters of the Cringe Kind. But not everyone was amused. Deep in Earth's military shadows, General Trask watched from behind mirrored shades, arms crossed as he sat in a fortified surveillance room. "This piece smells like bait," he muttered. "Empires don't go soft overnight." The man sitting next to him was the director of Project Parody, a former stand-up comic turned psychological warfare expert. "They're not soft," he replied. "They're infected." Infected? With Earth culture. They can't stop absorbing it. Our sarcasm isn't just annoying them, it's changing them. He pulled up a feed from inside the Vorkal. Zorthian soldiers were holding skit contests. Imperial officers were remixing orders into auto-tune. One of the high commanders had started a vlog channel titled Warship Diaries, Crushing Stars and Making Friends. Trask stood up. "So you're saying we've launched a psychological pandemic?" "Worse," the director said. "We've made them, like us." "But liking us doesn't mean they won't turn on us." The director grinned. "Exactly why we keep feeding them our worst, our chaos, our contradictions, our unscripted reality. It keeps them confused, and confusion is security." Across the ocean, in Geneva, a coalition of psychologists, diplomats, and meme curators formed a new department, Cultural Containment Protocol, CCP. Their job was to regulate just how much Earth was leaked into the Empire. Too little, and the Zorthians might regain composure. Too much, and Earth might collapse under its own absurdity. Meanwhile, on Zorthia Prime, things were spiraling. The Emperor, once revered as the voice of cosmic order, had begun wearing hoodies. His speeches now included punchlines. He fired 3 governors for lacking vibe alignment. An ancient court ritual was interrupted when he paused to watch cat videos sent by Mark. Old Guard Zorthians, warrior priests and star generals started whispering of blasphemy, of rebellion. That's when the Emperor made his boldest move. He invited Earth to co-govern the Empire. The announcement caused the kind of chaos even Earth hadn't anticipated. Back on the Vorkal, Volcra watched the news from his temporary Earth-made studio apartment. It was cluttered with comic books, a lava lamp, and 2 rubber chickens, gifts from fans. He turned to his translator drone. "Begin transmission." "To whom?" it asked. To Mark. I need Earth's most chaotic mind in the Emperor's court. Mark didn't hesitate. He didn't clear it with any government. He packed 3 hoodies, a Nintendo Switch, and a bag of flaming hot chips, then walked onto the diplomatic cruiser like he was boarding a budget flight to Vegas. When he landed on Zorthia Prime, the people, millions of years evolved, conditioned by rigidity and hierarchy, watched in confusion as this soft-bellied, gum-chewing human walked straight into the Imperial throne room. He bowed sarcastically. "Sup, your galacticness?" The Emperor looked down, half smiling. "I have decided to make you my Minister of Chaos." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Like, officially?" "Yes. You will be in charge of keeping our empire unpredictable, disobedient, and emotionally volatile. In short, human enough to avoid stagnation." Mark scratched his head. "You know I'm just a meme lord from Reno, right?" "Exactly," the Emperor said. "That's what makes you dangerous and necessary." Back on Earth, the world reacted with a mix of horror and pride. A man once banned from Facebook for excessive trolling was now part of the most powerful interstellar government in existence. General Trask sighed and muttered, "We're all gonna die." But the director of Project Parody simply smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe. We just won the weirdest war in history." Mark didn't fit in, and that's exactly why he worked. As Earth's newly minted Minister of Chaos, he now walked the golden halls of the Zorthian Imperial Palace in basketball shorts and a shirt that read, "I'm not lazy, I'm energy efficient." Zorthian elite looked on in horror. Generals whispered, nobles sneered, but no one dared challenge him. Not since the Emperor himself declared that Earth's unpredictability was now the cornerstone of the Empire's renewal strategy. Mark's first official act? He installed a suggestion box in the Emperor's throne room. On day 1, it was filled with jokes, insults, and a surprisingly detailed recipe for grilled cheese. By day 3, it became a source of news, ideas, and raw, unsanitized thoughts the Emperor had never heard before. Mark leaned into it. He held open mic nights in the war planning chamber. He replaced one of the grand strategy councils with a game of truth or dare. One Zorthian admiral admitted under pressure that he hadn't read the Empire's war doctrine in 300 years. Another dared to wear Earth denim to a tribunal. But amidst the comedy and chaos, something far more dangerous began to brew. Not everyone in the galaxy welcomed Earth's influence. On the far edges of the Empire, a coalition of old-world systems, known as the Purity Arc, began to gather strength. They rejected Earth's culture as corrosive, spiritually invasive, and worst of all, fun. They started small, boycotting Earth broadcasts, banning Earth food exports. Mark nearly sparked a diplomatic incident when he realized he couldn't get hot sauce on Zorthia Prime. But it escalated quickly. Within weeks, military vessels began disappearing in those regions. Embassies burned. On the planet Volnash, an Earth cultural outpost was destroyed. The last broadcast captured a chilling phrase scrawled in glowing plasma across the walls. Order restored. Chaos rejected. Back in the palace, Mark stood before the Emperor, fidgeting. This wasn't a joke. Not this time. "They're not just mad," he said. "They're scared. We broke their script, and now they want to delete the play." The Emperor's eyes, once cold and calculating, now disturbingly amused, narrowed. "They wish to preserve tradition." Mark pointed at the burning outpost footage. "That's not tradition. That's extremism with good PR." The Emperor sighed and stood. He wore no armor now, just robes stitched with Earth streetwear logos. "Then it's time Earth learned that chaos too has its price." Earth was not ready. Sure, it had defied the Empire, mocked it, warred with it through memes and madness. But this was different. The Purity Arc didn't threaten. It acted. It didn't laugh. It purged. When their fleet emerged from the maw of Catherian, it wasn't for intimidation. It was for execution. 100 ships, all painted black, all silent. No warning, no speech. They cut through the Empire's outer rim like fire through parchment. At first, Earth assumed it was another joke. Edited footage. A viral marketing scheme. Then came the broadcast. Only this time it wasn't in Earth language. It was in Zorthian war script, a dialect older than memory. The Empire translated it. One sentence. The infection ends now. General Trask, still watching from NORAD, slammed his fist on the table. I told you. I told all of you this was coming. The director of Project Parity sat across from him, chewing sunflower seeds. Yeah, but did you think it'd come with branding? Trask glared. This isn't a meme war. This is scorched space. Project Parity began scrambling. They launched Operation Comedy Shield, injecting billions of Terran signals into satellite networks, aiming to confuse, distract, and delay the approaching fleet. But the Purity Arc had learned. They had firewalled their ships, severed all cultural links. No memes penetrated, no jokes diffused. Earth's greatest weapon, its absurdity, bounced off like pebbles on steel. Mark, summoned back to Earth's Emergency Command Council, stared at the data feeds in disbelief. We finally meet a species that laughed at annihilation, and now we've got a faction that doesn't even smirk. He looked around the war room. All right, then we go old school. Operation Mock and Load began at dawn. It wasn't conventional. It wasn't even logical. It was Earth at its most dangerous, desperate, unpredictable, and inappropriately enthusiastic. They deployed hologram fleets that played reruns of sitcoms during battles. They installed laugh-track generators in orbital drones. They beamed 24/7 prank footage onto enemy ships, somehow reprogramming Zorthian hulls to emit fart noises on proximity alarms. And it worked. For a little while. The Purity Arc's front-line ships began malfunctioning, not from the tech, but from the crew. Soldiers broke down from sensory overload. Their mental conditioning failed under sustained exposure to human nonsense. But then, the fleet adapted. They sent drones, automated systems, no crew, no emotion, no weak spots. They cut through the Empire's defenses with surgical coldness, erasing every trace of Earth's cultural imprints as they advanced. By the end of the third day, 7 planets had gone dark. 2 Terran colonies were lost. And Earth began to understand what it truly meant to be taken seriously. Mark sat alone in what had once been the throne room of the Vor Kal, now restructured into Earth's interstellar culture HQ. He stared at the last message from the Emperor. Chaos was the cure, but now the patient is immune. You must escalate. Below the message was a single phrase. Unleash the archives. Mark hesitated. The archives were forbidden content. The darkest humor Earth had ever produced. Banned skits, satirical warfare, unfiltered social experiments, psychological warfare crafted not for laughs, but for collapse. There were reasons they'd been locked away. They weren't just edgy, they were unhinged. Are we really going to do this? He whispered. Behind him, a voice replied. We already did, the moment we made them laugh. It was the director of Project Parity. He handed Mark a drive. Inside this, the worst of humanity, the raw stuff, the truth wrapped in madness. Mark stared at it. We're about to fight monsters with monsters. Exactly, the director said. Time to see if hell really has a sense of humor. The drive was called Black Vault, Laughter That Bled. Mark held it in his hand like it was radioactive. Because, in a way, it was. This wasn't the light-hearted meme barrage that had turned the Empire sideways. This was the archival content created during Earth's most unstable decades, the uncensored psychological barrage tested in Cold War black sites, dystopian social labs, and canceled late-night shows too dangerous for syndication. Humanity's unfiltered mirror. He stood inside Earth's Interstellar Signal Command, a bunker buried beneath Reykjavik, designed to survive a planet-wide EMP and still broadcast cat videos. The screens around him flickered with warnings. Every official in the room had signed off on this operation, even though their faces betrayed silent doubt. Mark glanced at the director of Project Parody. "You're sure this won't break us instead?" The director's face was pale, his usual smug calm replaced with something grimmer. "It's a 50-50, but we've got no other cards left." The Purity Ark's fleet was now 30 hours from Earth's atmosphere. The Empire's loyalist systems were overwhelmed or burning. The Zorthian Emperor himself had vanished. Rumors said he'd exiled himself after refusing to launch a counter-offensive that would have killed billions. Mark sighed. "Right. Then we go full nuclear. Emotionally." He inserted the drive and unleashed Earth's final defense, weaponized honesty. The first signal wasn't a missile. It was a video, raw, handheld footage of a man breaking down in his kitchen at 2:34 a.m., confessing he couldn't afford diapers for his child. The sound wasn't edited. The lighting was awful. His tears were real. The next broadcast showed a street brawl between ex-friends over stolen rent money. Shaky cam, screaming, unresolved pain. Then came grainy therapy session tapes, stand-up comedians confessing they wanted to die between punchlines. Reality shows that were never aired because contestants turned violent and unpredictable. The Purity Ark's drones intercepted the signals. Their AI filtered it. At first they dismissed it as noise. Then the soldiers began to break. Because this wasn't war. This was emotional truth without anesthesia. Across enemy command ships, strange things happened. One commander fell to his knees, whispering that he'd seen his own mother's eyes in a woman on screen. Another smashed his console, screaming for silence. In less than 4 hours, the front line had turned into a graveyard of crippled minds. And still, the signals came. Earth unleashed comedy shows where the audience didn't laugh. Sketches that ended with silence and stares. Songs sung by the homeless. Game shows where contestants broke down because winning felt hollow. One fleet attempted to retreat. Their ship lost control mid-jump. When it reappeared near Neptune, its entire AI core was fried. The official Earth report said, "Emotionally induced logic loop failure." Translated, they couldn't process being human. But Earth paid a price. The broadcasts didn't just hit the enemy, they leaked everywhere, into civilian networks, into children's feeds, into soldiers' helmets, into homes. The same drive that broke the enemy started cracking Earth, too. In Tokyo, a riot broke out after a school mistakenly played a video titled, "Why Hope is a Lie" in a virtual history class. In New York, a mass silent protest formed outside UNHQ. No chants, just thousands holding signs with existential dread quotes. Mark watched from the bunker, shaking. "We're nuking our own minds." The director didn't look up. "We told the truth too hard." "Shut it down," Mark snapped. "Number, we're too close." He pointed at the enemy fleet data. 70% offline. 15% paralyzed. The last remnants, elite dreadnoughts, still pushed forward but slower, as if they feared what came next. Mark gritted his teeth. "Then aim it. Aim the last one." The director nodded. "There's only one file left. We saved it." He inserted the final clip. It was 5 minutes long, black and white, no cuts, just a single father sitting on the edge of a hospital bed, holding his daughter's shoes. No music, just breathe. A monologue, unrehearsed, unraveling. I told her the world would get better, that the pain stops, that people care. I lied, not because I'm cruel, because I'm her dad, because she needed something I didn't have. Hope. It's not always honest, but it's all I could give. The video ended. Within 20 seconds, the dreadnoughts blinked off Earth's radar. Not destroyed, abandoned. The ships drifted, lifeless, and so Earth won, not with guns, not with lasers, not with strategy, but with pain so raw it bypassed species, language, and ideology. The Purity Ark collapsed within hours. Its supporters refused to return home. Some begged to live on Earth. Others chose exile in the vacuum of space. The movement didn't die in war. It suffocated in understanding. Earth had shown the galaxy its ugliest soul, and the galaxy couldn't take it. 3 weeks later, Mark stood atop the rebuilt Imperial Tower on Zorthia Prime. The Emperor had returned, but as an equal, now called the first listener, not ruler. "Funny thing," Mark muttered, sipping cold coffee. "We won by being ourselves. Flawed, weird, bleeding, confused. Turns out honesty is the sharpest weapon in the universe." The director of Project Parody, now retired, stood beside him, grinning. "You didn't save Earth with humor. You saved it with truth dressed as a joke." Mark turned. "So, what now?" "Now," the director said. "Now we have a galaxy to teach how to laugh again, but not at the joke, at the pain." Mark smirked. "Dark." The director winked. "Human." Peace was ugly. Not in the way war left buildings burning or skies bruised, but in the quiet realization that nothing would ever be normal again. The galaxy wasn't just recovering from a battle. It was trying to understand Earth. And understanding Earth was like trying to explain sarcasm to a stone. In the months following the collapse of the Purity Ark, chaos became policy. Zorthia Prime transformed almost overnight. Where once stood monuments to conquest, now stood graffiti-covered theaters, absurdly designed public fountains, and statues of human emotions with QR codes that led to random memes. Imperial soldiers no longer marched. They danced flash mobs on weekends, rehearsing viral routines in once sacred war temples. Mark, now a reluctant icon, found himself promoted again. Title: Ambassador of Absurdity. Duties: none defined. Expectations: make the galaxy feel something. He sat at the Imperial Council round table, now oval because someone thought round was too fascist, with beings from over 80 species. Most were still trying to grasp what had happened. They understood war. They understood submission. But Earth had made them question everything. One delegate, a crystalline being from the planet Syrax, leaned forward and asked, "Why do humans mock your own suffering?" Mark looked up from his coffee, eyes tired but amused. "Because if we don't laugh at the pain, it owns us. Humor is how we mug trauma in a dark alley and walk away with its wallet." Silence. Then a slow clap from a gelatinous ambassador who had spent the last meeting watching sitcom reruns. Mark sighed. This was diplomacy now. Back on Earth, the consequences of victory rippled like aftershocks. The Black Vault broadcasts, though stopped, left scars. Entire therapy industries emerged overnight. Support groups formed for those affected by empathic dissonance, a condition where individuals became emotionally paralyzed by feeling too much too quickly. Ironically, humanity had created a new mental illness by weaponizing its oldest one. Governments tried to sweep it under the rug. They pushed tourism to Mars, encouraged alien cultural exchange programs, launched campaigns like Laugh Local, Think Galactic, and built interstellar streaming platforms that paid royalties in both credits and mental health vouchers. But under the surface, tension brewed. a growing faction on Earth called the Stoics began pushing back. They claimed Earth had gone too far, that in showing the galaxy their soul, they'd compromised it. They wore monochrome, avoided humor, and lobbied for Earth to cut all off-world entertainment exports. They called it a cultural quarantine. Mark heard about them through back channels. He watched clips of their speeches. He wasn't surprised, because deep down, he'd known this would happen. Mark found himself alone more often now. The parties, the accolades, the celebrations, they blurred together. He'd walk through Earth's new embassy on Zorthia, dodging alien fans asking for autographs on bananas. They thought it was Earth's currency. Then retreat to his room, close the door, and sit in the dark. He kept replaying the Black Vault's final video. The father, the shoes, the rawness still lingered. One night he received a call from the Emperor. No titles anymore, just a man trying to lead something he barely understood. "They want more," the Emperor said. "The other species, more Earth, more chaos, more meaning." Mark lit a cigarette. He wasn't a smoker, but these days, breathing anything felt like rebellion. "They think we have answers? They think your species has survived insanity, that you've turned it into culture." Mark exhaled slow. "We didn't survive it. We adapted to it, like cockroaches in a microwave." A pause. Then the Emperor asked, "Should we stop?" Mark didn't reply immediately. "No," he said finally. "But we have to change the rules." The new protocol was simple. Every Earth broadcast would now include a second track, human context. A digital filter that explained irony, trauma-laced humor, and cultural references before alien minds consumed the raw feed. It wasn't perfect. In fact, it was wildly flawed. But it worked just enough. Shows like Survivor Ohio, Funeral Roast Battles, and Crisis Kitchen became galactic favorites. Earth influencers taught empathy classes to planets who had never cried. But the Stoics pushed harder. They marched in silence through Manhattan, posted black and white propaganda across New Berlin, and hacked into Earth's most popular podcast to broadcast a single phrase. "You made the universe laugh. But at what cost?" Then the backlash hit. On a planet called Veraxis 6, a group of young aliens replicated a scene from an Earth comedy sketch where two friends faked their deaths to prank a third. They didn't understand it was fiction. 3 died, and the galaxy turned. News channels ran headlines, "Earth's humor kills again." Satire or sociopathy? Tears behind the laugh track. Mark was summoned to Zorthia's Senate. He expected a trial. What he found was a debate. One side, led by the Stoics, argued for Earth's cultural lockdown. The other, a mix of alien scholars, comedians, and accidental philosophers, argued that Earth had given the galaxy its first genuine identity crisis. And that was valuable. Mark stood when it was his turn. He didn't prepare a speech. He never did. He just walked to the center, looked out at the beings who once tried to exterminate his world, and said, "I get it. You wanted conquest, you wanted order. We gave you stand-up routines and trauma bonding, but don't pretend we corrupted you. We reminded you that feeling something, even pain, is better than feeling nothing." He paused. "You want to shut us down? Fine. You want to block our shows, ban our voices, silence our grief? Go ahead. But you'll lose more than Earth. You'll lose the best mistake you ever made." He walked off. The room stayed silent for a long time. Then the Jelly Ambassador clapped again. Earth remained open. But under watch, all humor was now considered emotional tech. It was regulated, licensed, taxed. Cultural engineers, once comedians and meme artists, now carried badges and underwent mental health screenings before releasing content to the stars. Mark stayed in the job. But he changed too. No more irony for irony's sake. No more reckless humor. Now, every joke had to mean something. The galaxy hadn't known silence in years. Since Earth's arrival onto the interstellar stage, everything had become louder, faster, weirder. Laughter echoed in places once filled with solemn hymns. Emotional chaos had replaced centuries of sterile obedience. And yet, in the depths of that chaotic joy, something quieter, colder began to take shape. A backlash wrapped in calm, simmering resentment. It began with whispers, as all rebellions do. On fringe worlds that once celebrated Earth's culture, people began asking different questions. Not, "What's the joke?" but "What is the price of the joke?" Not, "How do we feel more?" but "What have we lost in the feeling?" They called themselves the Echoes, a name born from the belief that true culture was an echo of past wisdom, not noise from Earth's bleeding edge. The Echoes didn't wear uniforms or raise banners. They wore silence like armor. Where Earth's influence was loud and disruptive, they moved quietly, tactfully. Their first target wasn't military or political. It was symbolic. They hacked Earth's most popular off-world show. Last Man Laughing, a reality comedy series that pitted sentient beings in absurd scenarios with the only rule being, don't laugh. Laughing meant elimination. It had billions of viewers across 5 systems. During the season finale, right when the last 2 contestants were about to face off in an exploding pudding factory, every screen went black. Then, a single message appeared, across every broadcast node from Zorthia to Mars. Entertainment without soul is just noise. Emotion without direction is just manipulation. Echoes remember. Mark got the alert while in the middle of a press conference on Jovial Station 9, a newly converted entertainment hub orbiting the gas giant Drex. He didn't flinch. He was used to backlash, to threats, to scandals, but this one was different. It wasn't angry. It wasn't wild. It was precise. When he got back to his quarters, there were already 12 reports from Earth Intelligence, 6 from Zorthian Security, and a private encrypted message that just said, "They're inside the feed systems. They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to replace us." For the next 2 weeks, every Earthborn cultural feed was under surveillance. But the Echoes didn't strike again right away. Instead, they rewrote things, slowly, subtly. One week, a beloved Earth cartoon suddenly ended its season with an episode about self-sacrifice and silent dignity. No jokes, no punchlines. Another week, a comedy film was mysteriously re-edited off-world into a tragic allegory about lost civilization. It wasn't censorship. It was cultural surgery. Mark convened with the director of Project Parody, now retired, but still an unofficial consultant. They met in a secure room beneath the Earth Embassy on Zorthia Prime, surrounded by neurodampeners and psychic blockers. "We're being diluted," Mark said. "They're taking our sharp edges and dulling them into platitudes." The director poured himself a drink. "And they're doing it with our own tools, using our delivery systems, our language. It's not a war. It's cultural counterinsurgency." Mark frowned. "So what do we do?" "You don't fight an echo," the director said. "You drown it." So Mark did what he did best. He went rogue. He bypassed regulations, ignored oversight, and launched an unsanctioned broadcast directly from the Vorkal's original War Command station, a place still loaded with ancient tech too outdated for echo interference. The program was simple. Mark, unfiltered. It wasn't funny. It wasn't comforting. It was real. Each episode, Mark spoke for an hour. No script, no censorship. He talked about Earth's worst days, about addiction, loneliness, war, about being laughed at while quietly dying inside. He told stories no one had the guts to tell. No laugh track, no graphics, just a man and a mic and the ugly beauty of the human condition. The first episode aired on 11 channels. By week 2, it was on 500. By month's end, it was the most watched program in the known galaxy. Because in a galaxy that had overdosed on punchlines, truth had become the new rebellion. But the echoes didn't stay silent. They hit back, fast and hard. One night, Mark returned to his apartment on Zorthia and found it trashed. Not by weapons, by symbolism. The walls were painted gray. Every piece of his Earth memorabilia was replaced with Zorthian art of solemn ancestors. His mirror had a phrase etched into it. "You taught us to laugh, now teach us to grieve." Then they took it further. They hijacked one of his broadcasts, not with a message, but with a demonstration. Live on air, a group of echoes performed a dramatized funeral of cultural dignity, showing actors dressed as Earth caricatures, clowns, influencers, drunk politicians, stumbling over a casket, while alien children watched in confusion. It was powerful and brutal. Mark didn't even try to shut it down. When the feed returned to him, he sat still for a long moment. Then he said, "They're not wrong." That sentence fractured the movement. Because if the chaos admitted fault, if Mark questioned the purity of Earth's culture, then even the believers were forced to pause. Earth had become a mirror the galaxy couldn't look away from. But mirrors reflect everything, including the cracks. A new wave of creatives emerged, not just humans, but hybrids, alien poets using Earth's beat rhythms, comedians from gas giant colonies mixing sarcasm with ritual chants, scriptwriters who combined satire with grief, and they called themselves The Balance. Their motto was simple: we laugh not to forget, but to remember without breaking. Mark didn't found them, he didn't lead them, but they all said the same thing. He gave us permission. Still, the battle wasn't over. The echoes escalated. They went after the archives, Earth's deepest cultural storage buried in the asteroid belt's vault stations. They launched cybernetic bugs into the vault's encryption system, not to delete the data, but to scramble context. Soon, ancient Earth content appeared spliced, broken, reinterpreted. A classic war movie now ended with a message about surrender as salvation. A timeless stand-up set was edited to turn self-deprecation into glorified victimhood. Even Earth didn't know what was real anymore, and the people began to fracture. Old Earth, New Earth, the Balance, the Stoics, the Echoes. They weren't killing each other, but they were splintering silently. And Mark, tired, older, watching his legacy mutate, finally decided to go home. He landed in Nevada, where it all started. The skies were quiet now. The stars held secrets he no longer needed to chase. He rented a small cabin, lived alone, and watched the world spin without him. Occasionally, a drone delivered fan letters, sometimes hate mail, usually both. But one night, the knock came. Not digital. Real. He opened the door to find a child, maybe 10 years old, green skin, 4 eyes, holding a drawing. It was crude, crayon, but unmistakable. It was a picture of Mark, standing on a stage. Below him were alien kids laughing, some crying. Above him the words, "You helped me feel okay about being weird." Mark knelt slowly. "What's your name?" The child beamed. "Zero." Mark smiled faintly. "You from Earth?" The kid nodded. "Half. My dad's from Andara. My mom's from Pittsburgh." Mark looked at the drawing again and realized that no rebellion, no censorship, no regulation would ever erase this one thing. The connection that only truth could make. The sky above Nevada was empty that night. No starships, no surveillance drones, no neon glow from orbiting satellites. Just cold wind across the sand, the smell of sagebrush, and silence. The kind of silence Mark hadn't heard in years, the kind that didn't feel threatening, just full. He sat on his porch with a thermos of something between coffee and anti-insomnia syrup, a drink popular among burnt-out Earth diplomats and ex-Galactic celebrities. The mug had a faded print. I survived first contact, and all I got was existential dread. Fitting. The kid, Kiro, had gone home after dinner, and 2 hours of Mark fumbling through old streaming clips on a dusty projector. Mark had shown him the early days, when Earth's culture was raw, hilarious, and tragic all at once. The memes that had started wars, the stand-up sets that became sermons, the unfiltered breakdowns that somehow healed entire species. Cairo had laughed, then cried, then laughed again, and before leaving he looked at Mark and said, "I don't want to be wise. I want to be real." Those words echoed louder than any message the Empire ever broadcast. Mark stared into the desert. His time was ending. Not from age, not from illness, but because his kind of relevance had an expiration date. The chaos he had birthed, the unfiltered flood of pain wrapped in humor, had given way to nuance, subtlety, layered culture that didn't need explosions of laughter or tears to feel profound. The balance had found its rhythm, and Earth was no longer a firestorm. It was a lighthouse, steady, still glowing but not screaming. He didn't resent it. He'd fought for this, bled for it. But now, he was the past, and the galaxy had moved on. Still, his story wasn't quite done. The next day, a message arrived via courier drone, a physical letter. Rare now, reserved for only the most personal of notes. The envelope was sealed with the insignia of the Unified Cultural Assembly, the council formed from Earth, Zorthia, and 6 other core systems that governed all interstellar media, philosophy, and art. Mark opened it, unfolded the thick parchment, and read, "You are hereby requested to deliver the closing speech at the Galactic Reconciliation Summit, to be held on the rebuilt ruins of Viraxis 6, the first planet where your message was both weapon and salvation. No script, no oversight, just your voice." At the bottom was a single line. One last truth before silence. He arrived on Viraxis 6 3 days later. What had once been a battlefield was now a garden. Not metaphorically, literally. The summit was held in a massive biodome, grown from native trees and Earth-engineered flora. Beneath the living canopy sat thousands of delegates, civilians, thinkers, and artists from across the stars. No guards, no armor, no threat, just people. The stage was a simple stone platform surrounded by growth. No lights, no microphone, just a circle. Mark stepped into it, looked around. No screens, no feeds, just eyes, alien, human, hybrid, waiting. He inhaled. Spoke. "When I was a kid," he began, "I didn't laugh much, not because I couldn't, but because I thought it made me look weak. That smiling was giving the world permission to take a swing at you. I used to watch comedy shows with my arms crossed, like I was too smart for joy." He paused. A rustle in the trees above. "Then one day I saw this old clip, a man on stage, bombing, no one laughing, jokes falling flat. But he didn't stop. He kept going, kept sweating, until finally someone in the crowd snorted. Not a laugh. A snort. And the guy froze, smiled, and said, 'You heard that? That's hope farting out of despair.'" Murmurs of laughter spread. Mark smiled faintly. "I laughed so hard I cried. And I realized then, humor isn't about being strong. It's about being brave enough to feel when you know it might hurt more than it heals." He turned slowly, looking at the faces. Beings who once couldn't process sarcasm, now leaning into every syllable. "We taught the galaxy how to laugh, and we taught ourselves to grieve. But the real miracle? We reminded each other we're not alone in the absurdity of survival." He pointed towards the dome. This place was built on the ashes of misunderstanding. The purity arc tried to erase our chaos. We responded with a mirror. And now look. No throne, no flags, just a garden. He stepped back. Maybe laughter won't save us. Maybe truth won't either. But connection? That's something no rebellion, no empire, no meme can undo. He took one last breath. And if nothing else, I'm glad we gave you that. He left the circle. Silence held for a moment longer than was comfortable, then applause, not thunderous, not wild, just honest. 3 weeks later, Mark was gone. Not dead, not missing, just disappeared. Some said he retired to one of Earth's moon colonies. Others claimed he was taken in by the balance to teach the next generation of cultural custodians. A few conspiracy nuts insisted he uploaded himself into the intergalactic net and now lived as a sentient stream of sarcastic commentary and dad jokes. But one thing everyone agreed on: he never came back. And maybe that was the point, because Earth didn't need him anymore. Not like it used to. The culture had matured, the galaxy had grown, and somewhere in a corner of the net, on a forgotten podcast from 10 years ago, his voice still echoes. We're all just walking paradoxes pretending we've figured it out. So if you're gonna fall, fall laughing. If you're gonna cry, cry loud. And if you're gonna tell a joke, make sure it's honest enough to hurt. Epilogue. Years passed. On Veraxis 6, children of every species attended storytelling schools built into the roots of the biodome. Each year, they'd gather under the old stage and take turns telling jokes, tales, confessions. And above the entrance to the storytelling grove, carved in stone, was a quote. "We didn't win the war. We changed the rules of the game." The signature was simple. But its echo would outlast empires.